morning. That is the bell. There we go. Is this working? Think so? No? Well, I hear it tapping. Maybe I just need to talk louder into it. I don't know. All right, we're in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 is what I have. Left off on page 65 in our workbook. Question number 8 is what I have marked. Okay, got confirmation there. Anybody need a book? I got a couple up here. All right. You should only need a book a couple more times. At least this book. Our next study, unless I do something small in between classes like I like to do, a short study, is going to be on the books of 1 Timothy through Hebrews. And so we're going to look at several books in our next, I guess, teaching quarter. Technically, this is the first day, but we're going to finish up 2 Corinthians first, these last few chapters. All right, if you remember, a lot of this end of 2 Corinthians, this kind of wrapping up of 2 Corinthians is, again, Paul going back to defending his apostleship, kind of defending, hey, I'm doing this for the right reasons, and he's going to talk about some of those reasons. Or some of the results of that reason here in just a little bit that he talks about in this chapter, where he's going to talk about all these things that he has experienced for standing up, because he stood up for what's right, and really what God expected of him as an apostle. And so we'll look at that here in a little bit. Also, giving some warnings about false teachers. A lot of our New Testament books have warnings about false teachers. The church is very new, and the church is growing, and so there would be concern that people are seeing that as an opportunity to come in and teach something that is not what God would want teach, something that is not according to God's will. And we see that again in our Wednesday night study. We've been looking at Jude for a few months, and that's what a lot of that book is about, right? About false teachers. You see a lot of these letters to these early churches warning about false teachers, because that's a serious danger then. And we also, since there's so much warning about that, we need to be careful of that. We don't need to just take something as truth because it's said from a pulpit or said in a Bible class or said by somebody that looks religious. We need to make sure that we test those things, that we check those things against the Word of God. And because it was a problem then, it is still a problem. I don't know if you'd say more of a problem now, but it's definitely a rampant problem in the church even today. And so we're going to see some more warnings against those false teachers in the rest of this chapter 11, as well. This next question, question 8, before we answer it, we do need to look at verses 16 through 23, and I'll go ahead and read those to get us started. I say again, let no man think of me a fool. If otherwise, yet as a fool receive me, and I may boast myself a little. That which I speak not with the Lord, after the Lord, but as it were foolishly, in this confidence of boasting. Seeing that many glory after the flesh, I will glory also. For ye suffer fools gladly, seeing yourselves are wise. For ye suffer if a man bring you into bondage, if a man devour you, if a man take you, if a man exalt himself, if a man smite you on the face. I speak as concerning reproach, as though we had been weak, howbeit, whereinsoever any is bold, I speak foolishly. I am bold also. Are they Hebrew? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they the seed of Abraham? So am I. Are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more. in labors more abundant, in stripes above measure, in prisons more frequent, in deaths oft. So we'll stop there. He's starting to get into some of the suffering there, but let's go ahead and see if we can answer question 8. Paul was and what 3 things does he say he is first? Yes, Hebrew. He is a Hebrew. He is an Israelite, and he is the seed of Abraham. Again, he's warning against these false teachers. And so as you can expect, if some false teachers might try to come into the church, they might try to come with some credentials, right? Some reason to be listened to. And we got to be real careful about that in the church today as well. Somebody might have gone to a great school that some other great preachers have come out of. Does that mean we should automatically accept everything that they say? No, right? We got to be careful. There have been some wonderful preachers come out of preaching schools and Christian-based universities, and there have been some serious false teachers come out of there as well. We shouldn't just base whether or not somebody is going to be bringing us the truth off of where they got their education, right? And so what Paul is kind of doing here, back down in verse 22, are they Hebrew? Are the one, okay, so they may come and say, look, you need to listen to me, I'm Hebrew, or I'm an Israelite, or I'm of the seed of Abraham. I can trace my descendants down to Abraham. And after each one of those, he says, well, so am I, right? That's not a reason to listen to someone. That's not a reason to necessarily give them more attention as though their words are going to be the gospel truth, right? Now, it is significant, or it would be significant to a lot of people that Paul could check all these boxes, though, right? That's part of why he was persecuting Christians way back in Acts, right? He was a Hebrew. He was an Israelite. He was of the seed of Abraham. He had some pride in his heritage. Now, again, there's nothing wrong in having your pride in heritage. But what he saw is, look, this Christianity, this movement, this man that had claimed to be Christ is a threat to my religious upbringing. To not only that, but he believed to the truth. And so he thought, hey, the way I can squash this, I can really put some fear into Christians. I can really scare them, right? I can preside over their deaths. And so he was a devout Hebrew, Israelite, seed of Abraham, right? And that would be significant. Some people wouldn't listen to you even then if you didn't have those credentials. Because, again, if you grew up as of the seed of Abraham or an Israelite or a Hebrew, you would have grown up being taught from the scriptures that you're a special people. You are set apart. You are not like the world. God has specifically said, because of the way you are born, you're my people. You're my chosen people, right? We're gonna bring the Savior through you. You are the ones that can truly worship God, right? And so that's what a lot of people would have grown up hearing. And so if somebody came along that didn't have that background, that didn't grow up learning that God had a chosen people, and they said, hey, let me tell you about Christ. Christ? Well, I'm not going to listen to you. You're not even a Hebrew, right? And so there was an advantage to Paul having this lineage, right? And this education. He learned at the feet of Gamaliel. He was a well-educated man. Okay, so again, false teachers coming in, trying to teach things that aren't true, trying to stand on these credentials that really don't matter anymore for the New Testament, for doing what Christ wants us to do. But he is able to say, look, if you're just going to listen to them because of those things, listen to me, right? I have those same boxes checked. And then there's one more thing he says, in addition to being a what? minister or servant of Christ, depending on the translation that you have there. Hey, I'm also a servant of Christ. So yes, I was born in that group of God's chosen people. I can trace my bloodline back to Abraham, right? I'm a Hebrew, but I'm also a servant of Christ, right? And so he's bringing about, again, trying to not only defend apostleship here, but also saying, look, don't get carried up, don't get carried away in these credentials that people are trying to throw at you, and be the reason you listen to them, right? And so that is kind of the point of that question there. All right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So Garrett said, you think that's why God allowed miracles? I absolutely do, right? Um, yeah. Yeah. The Jewish faith was, and they were powerful, right? I mean, they had their own governments within the government that the Romans kind of worked with, and so they were in charge in a lot of respects, and they had all this to back up their religion, right? Now most of them had taken it and twisted it, right? I'm sure there were many that were devout, practicing Jews. A lot of them had twisted it for that power, for that clout. But yeah, so that's why, part of the reason why God had miracles. What is the purpose of miracles? It's a question sometimes we ask children. It is to confirm the message, right? So that way, if a preacher, an apostle was to come and say, hey, Christ has come, Christ has risen, and he has ascended into heaven, and this is what we need to do, people might be like, this guy has no credibility. He's not a Jew. Well, let me perform a miracle right here, right? Something undeniable, and that confirms what I'm saying is true. If I was not with God, could that have been possible, right? Could we have healed the sick? Could we have told a man that has never walked in his life to get up? Could we have told a woman who had a flow of blood for years and years and years that she's made well, and then all of a sudden she's fine, right? It was to help confirm that message. So, absolutely. Yep, good point, Garrett. All right, let's, if somebody would not mind reading, we'll do verse 24 through 33. So it'll be 24 through the end of the chapter. All right, thanks, Mary. So, it's, again, we talked about I guess, starting a couple Sundays ago, how Paul's like, look, we don't need to be boasting, right? We don't need to be bragging about how great of a Christian we are. We don't need to be bragging about what type of minister we are. We don't need to be bragging of the service that we give. And then he gives this big list of all these things that he's gone through. And it almost sounds like, are you bragging? Like, are you now, okay, so you just told us don't Don't be boasting. And then you're like, oh yeah, well, I've been this, I've been this, I've been hurt this way, I've been. Now, what we have to be careful of here is he's not bragging in a way to say, look how great I am. Think of little kids. When little kids are at school, at recess at least, or in the lunchroom, at least this was the case when I was young. We like to brag about who was stronger, right? And there were several arm wrestling matches that would happen in the lunchroom to prove that. Or we'd like to brag about whose dad could beat up whose dad, right? That was always a big thing with boys. Oh yeah, well my dad could beat up your dad because of this, this, and this. And there's this bragging just to try to sound stronger. You never heard a kid in that situation say, oh yeah, I get beat up every day. I've had swirlies every time I walk by the bathroom. I've been shoved in 7 lockers. It's not bragging, right? It's not bragging to say, hey, I really get abused. I'm a weakling. I am always just dragged through the mud here. And so it's not that Paul's boasting like, look at how great I am. He's like, why would you not listen to me, okay? I am a Hebrew. I am an Israelite. I am of the seed of Abraham. I stand up for Christ. And you don't see me walking around like I'm some powerful being. I get beat up all the time, right? I am abused everywhere I go. I face these horrible things. If this wasn't true, why would I do this? Well, if I wasn't really an apostle, why would I go through these things that should be killing me often? These things that most people in life would never want to endure, and I've endured them multiple times, right? I'm not boasting because I'm trying to say I'm greater for going through all this. I'm saying, look, I have been abused in ways that most humans would never survive. And I'm doing that because I'm doing the will of God. I'm not doing that so that I can be paid, right? Not by you. I get my money from Miletus so that I can be supported by you. Macedonia, sorry, not Miletus. Miletus was what he talked about here just a second ago. From Macedonia, they have to support me because I'm not even getting money from you, right? And I get just drugged through the mud. Don't you think you should listen to me? Maybe you should stop questioning my apostleship. Maybe you should stop questioning my commitment to the Lord. Because if these things didn't break me, why would I if I didn't love the Lord, if I didn't believe what I'm teaching, why would I continue to go through these things that could kill me at any time? So, let's answer some of the questions. Question number 9. Paul had been beaten how many times by the Jews? 5 times by the Jews. All right, now that doesn't mean that somebody just kind of walked over and punched him in the arm, right? These are beatings. These are the types, some people wouldn't probably even survive a beating by the Jews, and he's gone through 5 of them. Now, some people like to think, boy, Paul was just superhuman to be able to survive these things. Some of the things that he went through, you'd probably wish you were dead. You'd probably wish that would not sustain you because it would be such a painful physical experience. But hey, I've been beat by the Jews 5 times, right? Receiving how many stripes each time? 40, right? Now, most translations will say 40 minus 1. Do y'all know why there's that minus 1 there? Yeah. If the guy's doing the beatings, right? If the guy's doing the lashes here accidentally did 41, well, now we'll tie you to the stone or whatever manner, and we're going to beat you 39 times. Probably do 35 times just to make sure, right? Maybe 30, right? Let's just And so they would try to never actually do 40. They'd try to do that 39 times because some of these beatings you would not survive. And if you did, you'd be in pain for quite a while, right? And so he faced those 39 stripes, right? So 39, each individual lashings, each of those 5 times. All right, again, I get beat up all the time, is what he's saying here. Question number 10. He had been beaten with what? 3 times. Rods. Okay, so those lashes are meant to more break the skin, right? It's a surface injury. You might cut through some of the muscle at times, things like that. You know, we read about the scourging of Jesus. Now, we're not necessarily sure that it would have been that every time, but it would have been lashes. Could have been that, but those were lashes. That was more of a whip. These rods, you think of being beat with a rod. Now, this is going to cause a different type of injury. This could, there's a difference if you get cut real deep and if you get hit with a baseball bat, right? You may have a different type of muscle damage, a crushing type of muscle damage, or even bone, right? If you're being beat by rods anywhere in your body, there's a risk of that crushing type injury to your muscles, and a breaking of bones is also a risk here. Now, we'll move on in a second. Again, he's not superhuman. Some people are like, he survived that. He must not have felt the pain. We're not told that, right? He felt each one of these blows with the rod. He felt each one of these lashes with the whip. He felt all of those things. It wasn't like he was just miraculously numbed so that he could just stand there and not be bothered. He suffered this persecution, right? Let's see. Stoned how many times? Once. Stoned once. Again, stoning you were never supposed to survive. Nope, Stephen didn't. It was designed to be a awful death, right? I have a friend who does he works with the Manna Project. Y'all know about that. He has actually seen a stoning firsthand, and he said it is something that will change your life, not for the better, right? He said this is not something that, again, that you would ever expect to survive, and it's not something that is generally over quickly. Yes, a large stone to the head could end somebody quickly, but the people doing the stonings don't typically just aim for the head, right? They want to inflict as much pain as they can while they are doing that execution in that really barbaric way. But he has survived one, right? Again, he felt those stones. If he was making this stuff up, why endure this? If he was making up his apostleship, if he was making up the things that he's writing to the early church, why endure that? Nobody would willingly continue to go through this abuse, right? All right, how many times was he shipwrecked? 3 times. We know some details from Acts about one of those times, but there's multiple times that he's been shipwrecked, right? This is a shipwreck would also be a different kind of discouragement, right? If you have people coming after you because you're doing what's right, maybe you can convince yourself, well, these people don't know God, right? These people are not. I cannot be bothered by that. Now, I don't know that anybody could endure what he said and say, I'm not bothered by that. But then you've got 3 shipwrecks. Nobody's intentionally wrecking these ships, right? These are things that would also just, you think about it, would be so discouraging. I'm trying to do the right thing, and I'm now faced with these 3 disasters at sea. Shipwrecks were not a good. You are not very likely to live from a shipwreck either. Now again, we do know of one shipwreck that seemed pretty miraculous, the outcome of it. That is from, well, we'll get down there in a minute. After reading Acts 14, 8 through 19, tell where Paul was when he was stoned. Does anybody have that? We might skip that just for time's sake, skip reading it. Lystra, yes. He was in Lystra when he was stoned. And so if you want to read about that stoning, if you need a refresher from our study of Acts several months ago, where they drug him out of the city and they stoned him there and left him for dead, and then he came walking right back in. That is there in Lystra in Acts 14. All right, one translation. This is question number 12. One translation, which I don't know anything about this translation, the emphatic Diaglott, in recording one of Paul's beatings, says he was beaten with rods at Philippi. Who was with him at this time? Who was with Paul in Philippi? Do y'all remember? Silas, yes, and we studied that in Acts 16, 16 through 22. What happened with Paul and Silas in Philippi? Do you remember? It's kind of a pretty memorable event, other than this beating with rods. We talk about the Philippian jailer when we talk about this. What else happened? Y'all remember what the Philippian jailer did? Anyone? He was converted. That's right. Okay, he was converted. That's why it's such an impactful, memorable story for me, at least. He was converted. So he was converted because not only was Paul beaten with rods in Philippi, he was thrown into prison, and not just in a comfortable prison where he got to watch satellite TV and work out all day, right? He was thrown in prison where he was locked, right? Generally they were locked to a wall, oftentimes in a very uncomfortable stance to await, not only to keep them there, make sure it's harder to break them out or for them to break out themselves, but also just to inflict a little bit of more psychological pain and physical pain while they're locked up there. So he didn't even really mention those details here when he's talking to the Corinthians. Maybe they already knew about them. But it wasn't, again, he is enduring all sorts of horrible things just because he's trying to do what's right here. All right. In Acts 27, 37 through 44, and Acts 28, 1, we read of one shipwreck. So he was shipwrecked 3 times, but we read of one here in Acts. Do you remember how many people were on that ship from when we studied it? Yes, 276 people were on this ship. Now that may not seem like a whole lot, but their ships were not anything like the big ships we see today, right? They would cram people on ships to basically maximize the efficiency, right? We're not going to run 2 ships. We'll just throw you all in one as sardines and take you across the water. Well, when a shipwreck happened and they were packed like that, the chance of survival was not good. What was the name of the island where the ship was wrecked? Malta? Yep, and some translations will say Melita, Malta, or Melita there. Yes, that's correct. How many of those 276 died in that shipwreck? 0. That's what was so amazing. And and if you remember, Paul warned that Roman that was in charge of it all, you don't need to leave port yet. We need to stay here. We need to stay here for the winter. There's a big storm coming. And if we go out there, we're going to perish. Well, he didn't listen to Paul. They went out there. Paul was right, obviously. Shipwrecked. What would have been normal in this situation with this ship full of prisoners is that the Roman soldiers, to ensure none of them escaped while they were shipwrecked on this island, it would have been normal to kill them all, to execute them all. And this is similar to, because of the reason of the 39 lashes, if a prisoner that you were in charge of was to escape, you got their punishment. And if you've got a ship full of prisoners, 3 or 4 escape, I mean, you're going to die. I'm almost guaranteed, right? And so they were going to kill these prisoners. But if you remember, that Roman in charge of all of these prisoners said, nope, don't do it. There's something going on here. There's something special going on here. We don't need to kill these men. Basically, he doesn't say it there, but I should have listened to Paul back in port, and I didn't. And so this time, we're not going to make another big mistake like that. And so through that shipwreck, through one of those shipwrecks, all of them survived. We don't really know details about other shipwrecks. Don't know if maybe he was the only survivor on some, or if every time they shipwrecked, they all survived. We just don't know. But think of the impact to those prisoners and those Romans to have Paul there shipwrecked with them, and really having these miraculous evidences here that, well, he knew what was going to happen, and to be converted potentially. All right, let's look at question number 14. Name Paul's perils. Well, I went to verse 26 and 27 for these perils. 26 says, in journeyings often. So maybe you could even say just going on a journey is a peril. I didn't write that one down myself, but journeying was super dangerous. To just go wandering around. We read about robbers in the Bible, and that's the way some people made their living. So in journeyings often, in perils of water, well, we read about some these shipwrecks. Maybe he was stuck out at sea for days and days with some of them. Maybe he was caught up in some floods. We don't know all the details. In perils of robbers, in perils of my own countrymen. So the bad guys have been after him and caused him great trouble. So have his own countrymen, the own people that he shouldn't have to worry about. He's been in perils because of them. In perils by the heathen, those that don't care anything about God. In perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils at sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and painfulness, in watchings often, in hunger and thirst, in fastings, in cold and nakedness. So, all these perils he's talking about, again, he's basically saying, there's no rest for me. Everywhere I go, I am facing perils. Everywhere I go, there's threats against me. There's something trying to derail me, right? And that makes sense. Satan's going to want to go after you if you're doing the right thing, isn't he? Satan is really going to want to dethrone the people that are heading towards the kingdom of heaven. Because if they're doing the right thing, they're bringing other people with them. And so those strong people for the Lord that are doing the right thing, hey, don't be surprised if you face perils. After reading about, this is question 15, after reading about Paul's sufferings, do you think he gives these things as something to complain about? No, we already talked about that. He's not whining. He's not saying, y'all are so mean and I have to deal with people everywhere I go. No, he's saying, look, again, it's kind of his defense here as to why he's doing what he does. All right, thought question. Paul lets none of his sufferings keep him from doing God's will. Is it likely that God will excuse us when we let a little Sunday morning headache or a visit from a relative hinder our service to Him. What do you think? Is it likely? Probably not. Did God say, "Oh, Paul, you just got stoned. You got to take the year off, or you got to take the next day off, or you know what? You don't have to stand up for me for a while. You don't have to do the right thing. You don't have to go back into that city. Don't worry about that." Nope. Paul got up and he went right back into the city, didn't he? Sometimes the things that we complain, if you had to list out your perils, would they sound anything like Paul's? Maybe some of them would. I don't know. But if you had to list out the things that pull you away, the temptations that you face for not doing the right thing, for not obeying God fully, the things that are against you in life, would they even compare to what Paul has said? There's a lot of history that isn't in the Bible that we have all sorts of awful, the boiling in oil and the ways they were cut up, and it's awful. It's awful stuff. Yeah. It should serve as a reminder, right, at times for us to say, okay, I need to stop complaining. I need to stop making excuses. I need to stop thinking I have a reason to not follow God's will, because I'm not under threat of any of these things. I don't have the American people trying to kill me. He said my own countrymen, right? I don't have them after me. I don't have foreigners trying to kill me. I'm not lost out in the wilderness. I'm not being shipwrecked. I'm not. And even if I was, what's the expectation? To still do the right thing, right? It's kind of scary to think about the things that we complain about or make excuses about as for reasons not to serve, when we see this is what God expects of His servants, right? All right, this next one kind of funny. Calling for volunteers. If you feel that you should sign the statement, do so. Statement: I feel quite ashamed of having complained of my little aches and pains when I think of the great apostle suffered uncomplainingly. Right? Can you sign that? Are you ashamed? I'm ashamed of some things I've complained about when I see what the apostles faced, for sure. Now, we shouldn't be controlled by that shame. We shouldn't say, "Oh, I'm worthless and I can never do right." That's the thing, right? Because even if you may sign your name and say, "Yes, I've done the wrong thing," but what has God done with your name if you do the right thing? He's written it, right? He has written it and said, "This is my child," right? So as long as we're repentant, as long as we do the right things, even when we realize we've done the wrong things and we repent of that correctly, it doesn't matter what kind of thing, what statement we've signed here as far as what wrong we've done. As long as our name is written in the book of life, that's all we need to worry about. All right, question 18. What did Paul call those things without? Yes, the things that come upon him daily. So it's kind of, if you don't go back and read it in context, it's kind of a funny question. But he talks about things within and without, right? And so there's things that happen to him daily also, these external forces, right? External things that happen to him also. Those things are the things that come without. All right, good discussion this morning. We'll pick up on question 19 next week.